Okay, we know that SpaceX in general and Starship in particular has many enemies. Jeff Hu, for example, is pursuing a full-time career in suing SpaceX and NASA and hindering progress of Starship wherever he can. We also have the FAA with their really slow working process, a bureaucratic agency unfit for the extremely aggressive development timelines and launch schedules of SpaceX. And of course we have berserk environmentalists that want to stop development of the Starbase site, SpaceX's Starship launch site at Boca Chica, Texas. But now an environmental engineer says that the FAA is actually super friendly to SpaceX and is fast-tracking the environmental assessment in favor of SpaceX. Wait, wow, so the FAA, that has been a constant pain in the ass for SpaceX ever since they started launching Starship test flights at Boca Chica, should now suddenly be SpaceX's best friends? This anonymous environmental engineer published a 12-part series in which he attacks SpaceX wherever he can. So what's behind these accusations? Let's dive right into it. We all know that Elon Musk has many enemies. I mean, we get it. He has an edgy personality and sometimes shows an eccentric behavior, especially with his sometimes weird or aggressive tweets. We quite often talked about the anti-Elon Musk hate bandwagon that was forming over the last years, but which has intensified even more with the success of SpaceX and Tesla. There are many channels now popping up on YouTube that make it their life goal to pump out video after video supposedly debunking Elon and his inventions. Elon always had many enemies. His companies have probably already disrupted or are in the process of disrupting many different industry sectors. The car sector is just the most obvious one, but also solar power, battery storage, power plant buffer batteries, car insurance, public transport, full self-driving, AI, and in the future neural systems and robotics, and already most famously of course spaceflight. We've known since a while now that SpaceX is completely and utterly destroying competitors in the spaceflight industry. From the Russian space agency Roscosmos to the European Space Agency, that now both completely rely on government subsidies because they cannot compete with SpaceX's lower pricing anymore, to American old space companies like Boeing and Lockheed, who have formed the joint venture ULA that is also under massive pressure from SpaceX, and even to Blue Origin. We don't even have to talk about how Blue Origin is trying to solve that they are under pressure from SpaceX, namely by lawsuit after lawsuit. Jeff Bezos is obviously a massive and powerful enemy of SpaceX, but ULA also try all they can in order to defame and lobby against SpaceX, which has now been 100% confirmed via leaked emails. We talked about them in this video here. So these are all confirmed facts that SpaceX has really powerful enemies. And we also often talked about how the FAA is hindering SpaceX with their slow and bureaucratic approach as to approve Starship test launches. All this keeps postponing and hindering the progress to make humanity a truly spacefaring civilization. Now, in order to approve launches of Starship and Super Heavy, the next generation fully reusable rocket system that will allow humanity to settle on the Moon and on Mars, SpaceX for that purpose has been closely working together with the FAA for years now. The latest draft programmatic environmental assessment of the Starbase launch site, for example, would allow for only 5 Starship and Super Heavy launches annually from Boca Chica, Texas. That is really not much. It is a super low number considering that already about 8 launches of refueling tanker Starships will be needed in order to just fully fuel one Moonlander Starship for NASA's Artemis program. So SpaceX will definitely need other launch sites. For example, additional Starship and Super Heavy launches from the Kennedy Space Center and the 2C platforms in order to be able to realize the goal of expanding humanity to other worlds. And that's what this whole venture is about, expanding humanity to other worlds in order to drastically increase the chances of our long-term survival. A species that is bound to only one world is pretty sure to become extinct sooner or later, as many threats are looming that want to kill us. Supervolcanoes, viruses, asteroids, gamma-ray bursts, nuclear war, just to name a few. So this is the grand goal here. It's about our long-term survival. But everyday people don't understand this or are not very sympathetic to that cause. They think that space will be a refuge for rich people who will want to abandon the dying Earth. A scenario that has been popularized by movies such as Elysium or Blade Runner 2049 with its off-world colonies, when in fact it is about making the future more exciting and allowing humanity to reach the next level in the natural process of a species evolution, namely to become truly spacefaring. I think that this is a natural process in the universe, and billions of intelligent species probably went extinct already because they didn't get off their home planet in time until some disaster struck. Take Venus for example. Evidence points to Venus having had favorable conditions for life and even oceans on its surface for billions of years. But then the Sun increased in luminosity by just 10%. That was already enough to turn Venus into the hell that it is today. Only 10%. The same will happen to Earth in a few 100 million years, by the way. So it is absolutely imperative that we leave Earth. We cannot stay here forever. Also, for all the spaceflight haters out there who say that these are just vanity projects of billionaires, for example like the absolutely clueless UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who in a recent speech said exactly that, just take a look at all the offshoot technologies of spaceflight. Many of the devices we use on an everyday basis would not exist without spaceflight. No GPS, no CMOS sensors, no cloud computing, no cardiac pacemakers, and so many more. You can find a complete list in the description. So, human spaceflight doesn't only save humanity in the long run, but makes life on Earth better and even saves lives in the short term through countless new technologies. But of course, that will not deter people from fighting spaceflight with an energy and zeal that rivals the zeal of the early Christians who often tore down the beautiful temples of antiquity in their boundless hate against the pagan gods. There are many people who outright hate the idea of spaceflight, and thus of course consequently they hate Elon Musk with all their heart and energy because he makes spaceflight possible on a large scale now. Even more so since he is successful and they most often are not. So one of these people who try to stop Elon Musk and SpaceX in general, but Starship Super Heavy in particular, is an anonymous environmental engineer who runs a blog called ESGhound. He published a 12-part series, link in the description, accusing the FAA of being in the pockets of SpaceX by fast-tracking the whole environmental review process for the Starbase launch site at Boca, Chica, Texas. Yes, we are talking about the very same FAA here that has been a constant pain in the ass for SpaceX for the last 3 years since SpaceX started developing Starship at Boca Chica. He basically says that what SpaceX is proposing to build at Boca Chica goes far beyond the scope of a regular programmatic environmental assessment (PEA) and would normally require a much more rigorous environmental impact statement (EIS), which usually takes years to prepare. It is pretty clear that this would delay Starship and Super Heavy to such an extent that we can basically forget our space future near term. This anonymous environmental engineer, as you can guess, is absolutely not neutral on this topic here. And of course he doesn't hesitate to express his very strong feelings about Elon Musk time and time again. For example, according to him, Elon Musk is a childish billionaire who has a mile-long rap sheet of blatantly ignoring regulations if they're even slightly inconvenient for him, or that he's a sociopathic billionaire. Also Elon F-word Musk. Or the most hilarious part, that Elon is slightly above average intelligence, a walking testament of bluster, inherited wealth and straight-faced lies. Dunning-Kruger chart personified. Like, seriously, has this guy ever even seen an interview with Elon Musk? It's pretty clear to anyone with a decent amount of intelligence that Elon Musk is a complete and utter genius with an IQ of easily over 130. And I say that as someone who is not a regular Elon fanboy, because I fully admit that he has quite some personality flaws. But come on, one has to admit that Elon is a freaking genius at what he's doing. Single-handedly forcing all car makers to build electric cars? Like, that's something someone with slightly above average intelligence could have done. Or nearly bankrupting the Russian space organization. Yep, slightly above average intelligence. Forcing old space companies to team up because else they will die? The making of a guy with an IQ slightly over 100, sure. Disrupting probably 10 different industry sectors? Slightly above average intelligence. Crystal clear. It's quite fascinating what weird rants Elon haters are capable of. I mean, I assume they themselves are super smart, right? IQ 180, that's clear. But then where are the companies that they have founded? Where are the contributions of Elon haters to humanity? All those guys do is sit in front of a PC all day long and publish blogs or make YouTube hate videos on how evil a guy Elon Musk is. Well, these are some pretty amazing contributions to humanity. Wow, thanks guys, really. Also, this guy thinks that fully battery-powered electric cars in general, but Teslas in particular, are bad for the environment. Something that has been debunked, I don't know, already 100 times now? And plug-in hybrid EV cars are better for the environment according to him? Like, what? Okay, but that would deserve another video, so back on topic. It's pretty clear that this guy hates Elon Musk as much as you can hate somebody, and that this is clearly compromising his ability to remain fair on the subject and keep track of the bigger picture. So the core of ESGhound's argument why SpaceX and Elon Musk are so evil is that SpaceX's Starbase launch site would have a larger environmental impact on Boca Chica County than SpaceX admits. One argument, for example, is that SpaceX is proposing to build a 250 megawatt natural gas power plant, which is true, it's specified in the PEA, but SpaceX will also build a large solar farm for electricity generation. He estimates that 50 million cubic feet of natural gas will be needed per day to feed this power plant. And this estimate is correct. I compared it to the requirement of other natural gas power plants. Talking of other natural gas power plants, let's have a look at some large natural gas power plants and how much power they produce, just to get a feel of SpaceX's power plant. The largest natural gas power plant on Earth produces 8,695 megawatts of power, and in the lowest rank of that table here, we are at 3,050 megawatts of power. So the SpaceX power plant would require not even 10% of the amount of natural gas which number 19 on this list here requires. So this power plant is hardly a big one. Then also, the Super Heavy and Starship run on liquefied methane and liquefied oxygen. We all know that. You can extract oxygen from the air and liquefy it, but with methane, you basically currently still need natural gas as a source for the methane, because natural gas consists of typically around 95% methane. Starship and Super Heavy run on methane instead of hydrogen, because this will be extremely important for the settlement of Mars. Since Mars's atmosphere is almost completely made up of CO2, you can extract CO2 from its atmosphere and create methane via the Sabatier process. So you can create your Starship fuel directly on Mars. It thus has to be methane if we want humanity to live on Mars, which we argued is really important long term. Now, in order to get a lot of methane for the power plant and for Starship and Super Heavy itself, SpaceX will need to get natural gas from some sites in Texas. Most of the sites with a lot of natural gas production are quite far away and will require the building of a pipeline. The author of ESGhound is quite correct here. SpaceX would need a pipeline from the gas wells about 80 miles away in order to transport the necessary 50 million cubic feet of natural gas per day to Starbase. However, what amazes me is that the author completely blows up the severity of the situation. I mean, of course he does, because he hates Elon Musk and SpaceX. We are talking a gas pipeline here, okay? Not destroying a wildlife reserve. Sure, a 100% correct regulatory approach would probably require a more thorough environmental impact statement. But then again, what is more important in the grand scheme of things? Having to build a pipeline through a nature reserve, the impact of the pipeline on the animals there being probably quite negligible, or the future of humanity? And what would the alternative be? Carrying all the natural gas with thousands of trucks to Boca Chica? That would be better for the environment? I really doubt it. Also, the total emissions from all these operations at Starbase are estimated to be 47,522 metric tons of CO2 equivalent per year. That sounds like a lot, right? But this is only 0.00092% of the annual US greenhouse gas output. A very minuscule amount in the grand scheme of things. Compared to worldwide emissions, the percentages are of course a lot lower. Everyday Astronaut has made a really good thread on that topic, link in the description, it's really worth the read. He estimates that it would need 937 Starship and Super Heavy launches per day to match the greenhouse gas emissions of only the airline industry. And the airline industry in turn makes up only 2% of the total of human greenhouse gas emissions. So this would correspond to about 47,000 launches of Starship and Super Heavy per day in order to match worldwide greenhouse gas emissions by other human sources. But we are not talking hundreds or thousands of launches from Boca Chica annually, but only 5, okay? Like 5. The impact on greenhouse emissions is therefore absolutely negligible. And unfortunately, there currently is no other way to reach space, okay? We do not yet possess anti-gravity UFO devices or other exotic propulsion methods. So that's currently the only way to colonize Mars, which we have. And Elon is also offsetting these emissions probably 10,000-fold with Tesla and Tesla's acceleration of sustainable energy, okay? Then Elon Musk has started the CO2X prize in order to extract CO2 directly from the atmosphere. That's what people like ESGhound in their blind Elon hate don't see. The long-term goal is to extract CO2 from the atmosphere directly here on Earth and thus create methane via the Sabatier process. That is the end goal. And please tell me someone else who would contribute $100 million for the CO2X prize in order to extract CO2 from the atmosphere, in order to not only power rockets, but to also scale that technology so it can be used for future carbon capture. Carbon capture will drastically reduce the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere and will be quite possibly an essential technology in order to prevent the temperature from rising above 2 degrees Celsius over pre-industrial levels. So evil Elon with his $100 million X prize trying to solve another problem of humanity. What an evil guy he is. Thus, in the grand scheme of things, I would argue that building a pipeline and extracting natural gas from some natural gas wells in Texas, which will contribute to not even 0.001% of annual US greenhouse gas emissions, might maybe be the lesser evil than us getting extinct here on Earth, you know? I don't know how you feel about it, but that's how I feel. So I will again ask all viewers here that understand the utter importance of human spaceflight to write to this email here on the FAA site and tell them that it is of the utmost importance to allow SpaceX to progress with Starbase at Boca Chica, because the future of humanity depends on it. Oh, and we didn't even talk about the importance of Starship and Super Heavy for the continued superiority of the US with regards to aggressive Chinese space militarism. So yeah, that's another important point to consider, I would say, when wanting to hinder SpaceX. Because if you hinder SpaceX, you basically allow China to continue its aggressive expansion unchecked in space. One should also keep that in mind, please. So, you decide what the lesser evil will be. A new gas pipeline through Texas, or China dominating space and humanity being stuck on Earth forever and probably going extinct. Yes, this was a long episode, but it was a necessary one, because the short-sightedness of some people makes me really angry. Also, exaggerated Elon Musk hate makes me also angry. Sure, you don't have to like him, because he really behaves like a complete a-hole sometimes, but you cannot deny his insanely important contributions to the advancement of the human species. If you cannot see this, well then you're lost, sorry. So that's it from me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. All the best from Jishuan and me, and then on to the future.